Hey, you may need to look at how we're doing legal immigration in this country because it's not America first.
Just when I thought Meatball Ron couldn't get any more evil, Sweaty DeSantis really put his big boy pumps on and got in front of some cameras to say this.
How would that even remotely be acceptable? You have chain migration, which is not merit-based and is bringing in more distant relatives. Not what you want. So there's a whole host of issues there that need major reform. But from an immigration enforcement perspective, I mean, if somebody is here on like an H-2A visa, they are working in the state of Florida legally. And when we did E-Verify, people would say, we had E-Verify enacted, they'd say, hey, there's a busload of farm workers. I saw them on I-4. And people assume they're illegal. And then FDLE looks, they all had the H-2A visas. And so there's no enforcement if somebody is here on valid reasons. Now, it doesn't prevent us or Congress and people like me from just using my platform to say, hey, you may need to look at how we're doing legal immigration in this country because it's not America first the way it's going.
So when some Karen sees a busload of migrant workers and decides, hey, they must all be illegals, Ron DeSantis says, hey, wait a minute, they're not illegals, they're legal, and that's the problem. Not only that, he wants to go after, quote, chain migration, which is when legal immigrants enter their family members through the legal process to gain their own citizenship.
And enforcement is focusing on illegal aliens that are in the country, in our state. Legal immigrants obviously have a right to be here. They're following the process. Now, that should not mean that someone here is H-1B. Of course, they're not going to be sent. But if there's fraud and if these programs should be reformed, they do need to be reformed. But I would not conflate the two. I think the media oftentimes, they try to frame it as if somehow somebody comes, they apply, they come to the United States, they're doing good. And it's like, oh, they're going to enforce against, quote, immigrants. No, they're going to enforce against illegal aliens. And that's really what we're talking about.
It's not the media conflating legal migration with illegal aliens. It's the Republicans in the House and in the Senate and a growing subsect of the Democrats who are supporting something like the Laken Riley Act. We did a deep dive in an earlier video, but I want to reiterate exactly what's in the text of this act. You can see that this first section here is for the detention of certain aliens who commit theft. The language here is really important. They use the word aliens and they say commit theft. And this act seeks to make changes to this section of the Immigration and Nationality Act, and we'll take a look at the language of that act in just a second. What's important with the Laken Riley Act is that it not only gives state attorney generals power to enforce, which is what we went over in the last video, but amends the act to say that any alien that is charged with, is arrested for, is convicted of, admits having committed, or admits committing acts which constitute the essential elements of any burglary, theft, larceny, or shoplifting offense. Which means any alien, legal or otherwise, who is simply arrested for these crimes will be deported. And it's important to note how an alien is defined in the Immigration and Nationality Act. An alien present in the United States who has not been admitted or who arrives in the United States, whether or not at a designated point of arrival, shall be deemed for purposes of this chapter an applicant for admission, which means any immigrant who comes into this country and is in the process of applying is considered an alien. An alien for which, if the Laken Riley Act passes, even being accused of shoplifting will get deported. These are legal immigrants, not illegal immigrants, legal immigrants who are in the process of either applying for asylum or applying for visas or in the final steps of becoming nationalized. They are by law still an alien. And the Laken Riley Act allows for a state official to deport someone who is simply accused of a crime. This goes so far past due process, it's scary. So when Ron DeSantis makes snide comments about chain migration, the process by which many Americans legally came to this country, you should very much be aware that he is saying the quiet part out loud. The Republicans do not want immigration, period, of any kind. And if they have their way, we'll find ourselves in the same position that Japan is in. Falling birth rates, labor shortages, a shrinking population. Because as it turns out, any population needs genetic admixture. These isolationist policies are anti-American and will lead to the collapse of this country. And the Democrats, in all their infinite wisdom, are doing a horrible job making arguments against the Laken Riley Act. They're making it seem like it just applies to illegal immigrants, when in reality it applies to all aliens. aliens, even legal aliens. Look at how Dick Durbin phrases his argument.
We should do everything possible to make sure this type of tragedy never occurs again. But I do have concerns about some of the language in this legislation. Let me give you an example. This bill would mandate immigration detention for an undocumented immigrant if they are arrested for shoplifting, even if they're never charged or convicted for that offense. Most people, having paid a little attention to law enforcement review, television, movies, know the process. You steal a candy bar, hand on the shoulder, the clerk says, wait a minute, what are you doing here? Next thing you know, a policeman's called in, and he arrests you for shoplifting. They then take you in and charge you with that crime. You make a plea, guilty or not guilty, and ultimately it's resolved by a trial of some nature. That's the ordinary process. The question is whether or not someone should be deported at the very first time that the hand reaches your shoulder with your candy bar in hand, but no charge of any crime. That is what this bill does. That's going a little bit too far as I'm personally concerned. This bill would mandate immigrant detention for an undocumented immigrant if they're arrested for shoplifting, not convicted.
You see the language that he chooses to use there? An undocumented immigrant? It's not just undocumented immigrants, guys. It's any alien. Anybody who has not yet completed their process of immigration. This is incredibly dangerous legislation because as of right now, the legal immigration process can take up to a decade or longer. So in those 10 years, if you piss off a police officer who are well known for their lack of temper and impulse control, then all that cop has to do is arrest you and accuse you of shoplifting. And now all of a sudden, Homeland Security is forced to deport you, even if you've been here legally for years. Because, and I can't stress this enough, this would allow for a state attorney general to take into custody any alien. It doesn't just apply to illegal, undocumented aliens, it also applies to legal aliens. Horrible, draconian legislation that the Democrats are being super soft on, and that scares the living crap out of me. Because to come for immigrants is to come for the fabric of this country. Not only is it racist and bigoted, by locking down immigration this way, we will see a steady decline in the productivity of this country. And I know for a fact that that decline in productivity is going to be somehow the Democrats' fault, instead of the Republicans for their idiotic immigration policy. I'm Tony Hinderman with Really American. I'll catch you next time.